When creating flows from the floor onto the reformer, remember you can always start on the floor, kneeling, lying, come up to standing, this, and then you can flow onto the reformer. When I do a side the carriage work, if I'm going to choose one side, I'm going to do it on the right, flow onto the reformer, and then flow back off and start it again on the left. I'm going to try my best to always do the same side. So right side of the bed or carriage, reformer, right side body. So swivel pulleys are down. They don't have to be. You can also shorten your loops by twisting them if you want to um, make yourself closer to the risers, because if I want to be closer, I'm going to loop that around a couple times just so I have that riser if I need to work on balance. But just remember, you've got a cue, pull it off when you get on the bed, which is a really great way to do it. Today I'm going to show you without having to shorten and lengthen the rope, but that's much faster than, adjusting with the gears. So this flow is going to start with balance. And I want to make sure whichever hip I'm working on, and again, right side of the carriage, right side of the body, I'm going to make sure my hip is aligned with that swivel pulley. So I don't want to be out too much. And we'll do that when we get to the other side. So starting this balance with, I just do step backs just so my students or myself can get that sense of stability. I start step backs, noticing I'm lowering the foot and lowering the foot. Then my next goal is to give options of either gliding the toe on the floor or lifting the foot up. Then I'm going to take it into a bent over position, do the same thing, stepping it back, offering a toe glide, or lifting the foot off. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand it to my right arm, turn around, right leg back, and go into overhead shoulder presses. Once I've done that, I'm going to pivot into the machine, noticing I'm stepping in front of the carriage, because I want to make sure where my body is positioned, I know that I'm going to sit on the carriage at the next position, and then I'm just going to press arm in and out. And here's the transition. So when you're starting standing, when you go from lower body standing, whatever it is you do, upper body standing, pivot, step in front of the carriage, not at the back, because then you need to transition to sitting. So then we go here, pressing the arm in, pivot, have a seat. My standard that I do is always balance legs, hand on the reformer for stability, and pressing across or pulling across, depending on what side of the body you're doing. And we're doing right, so we're going to do pulling across. And then right into rotation. If I need balance, I keep one hand on. And then my next thing I like to do is turn, kneel, still right side body, pressing arms, perhaps biceps, and then I would finish off with high pulls. You can do whatever you want. You can go to a hip hinge. You can add triceps, but for today, I'm going to do standing balance, shoulders, arm pulls, seated arm pulls, rotation, kneeling. So I'm going to go through that, just a couple reps one more time, and watch the flow and transition off to the other side. I may need to move the reformer out a little bit. It's pretty close to the wall to work on that side. All right, so here I start with that standing balance, right side body, Standing, step backs for 2. Lost my balance. 1. Let me step back even more so I don't bang that carriage. All right, 1, 2, maybe toe glides. My ankle's bugging me today. I apologize about that. My left ankle. And then lifting up to presses. Grab, pivot, turn, and into presses overhead. Step towards the carriage, pivot in, and then press the arm across the body. And have a seat. If you're going to do arm pulls and balance, go to short or long, depending on the student's strength. Hold on for those who need the support. And then rotation, holding on, or rotation, hands off, hands on the shoulder rest, pivot around to kneeling, going to the arm presses, to the biceps, and the high pulls. Now this is where we're going to switch, reversing everything we just did. Grabbing for left, starting backwards, high pulls, biceps, straight arm presses, pivot around, rotation with either hand on or hand off, arm pulls across the body with the hand on, and then go ahead and stand up, pivot, going into that arm pull across the body, step out, pivot. I'm going to go to the long loop, around, and arm presses. Oops, how did I do that? We're left side body. My bad. I'm trying to think of the sequence there. So coming off, we finished the arm pull. We did the arm presses. That's what I did. Step it back and left arm press. Pivot around, left foot, and do your step backs. Toe glides. Actually starting hip hinge. I forgot we did that. Presses, then finish with standing. So you have that option. Let me show you. And that was a little bit harder to think about for some reason for me today. You have the option of flowing backwards like I did. You need to know the flow and you need to keep cueing. And that's what I made a mistake. I'm talking about everything we're doing and then I wasn't cueing specifically on the flow. So I grabbed it with the right. And that's important to understand because that's going to happen when you're going backwards and you're learning the flow. So just be very thoughtful when you're cueing and always cue right side, right side, right side. Great. Now grab left, 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 and just cue left the whole time. That will help a lot. I find that helps me too when I'm not trying to think of all the components. Now, you can either do it backwards or when you get done, you do your arm presses, you do your bicep curls. You can cue everybody to get off the bed. All right, guys, let's go ahead and step off. Grab your left. We're going to start that flow standing on your left. That's 2 options, either to flow it backwards on the other side or go ahead and get up and then do it forward. It doesn't matter. I actually do it both ways when I'm doing single side body. Now, let's discuss options for arm movement, and sitting position. So when we finish whatever we choose, and please understand that this is all just guidance. I don't want you to be stuck in doing these specific exercises. So we do right side body presses overhead. We pivot in. We do our, let's say we're going to do bicep curls or stick with what we just did. You either can pivot around like I showed you and sit, or you can just cue to kneeling, side kneeling, do something there. Pivot, press arm there, and then reverse it to pivot side kneeling, then stepping off and doing your arm presses across the body, pivot back, shoulder presses, pivot back, left foot. So try those different options. And as I mentioned, when I did the foot bar or the front of the reformer and I flowed on, remember, I can flow back off into the back of the well and use the back of the standing well series, link them together and flow. So really think about your transitions. Whether I'm doing a flow from the front, I'm going to get onto the carriage and back off the front, or I'm going to take a standing in the back and merge them together, or perhaps I'm going to do the side. I'm going to do the first series sitting, flow them on, flow them off, and then start standing, flow them on, flow them off, aside. So hopefully that made sense, but I want you to start getting creative and linking. And as I mentioned before, I'll do more in the future. I just want the options of floor to reformer flows to start allowing you to build in more unique variations. And I love doing mat work aside the carriage and in front and behind. So let's say we took that standing and we want to do a little mat. I would lay the mat right here. I would do some mat work, come to a kneeling series, stand them up, and put the foot in, and then start the steps there, and then flow on. So enjoy playing around with this series. Make sure to leave me a comment if you have any questions about it. Getting to know the flow, remembering the sides of the body is super important, and you need to figure out, and I recommend trying both. One where you flow on, reverse the flow off, or one when you flow on, then get up and start the flow again on the other side. See what you like better. Also, I test it with my students and see what class. Some classes like doing it backwards because it really makes them think, and other students prefer to get on, do the flow from one side. And I've done it before, and I don't want to get too confusing, and I just want this to be kind of like a platform for you to start doing floor to reformer flows. But let's say you do single side body. You get them on the reformer, and maybe you want to do something on the reformer as a transition between the two sides. Meaning, let's say I'm going to finish the flow on the right, and I may do some down stretches, something that isn't single side, or I'm going to do right arm pulls, pivot face forward, do some rowing series, seated rowing front, flat back, let's say. Then I'm going to get them off and then start the flow back in. So there's so many options. I don't want to confuse you, but I want you to know, don't get stuck with this style of repeating the transition backwards or starting it again. You can put a transition in the middle. And in the future, when I do a flow that's a little longer than this, because this is just, 2, 4, 3, maybe 10, 15 different exercises, let's say. Sometimes I'll do like 20 to 30 each side. But that means I've done the flows multiple times to where I remember the sequence. I do have some teachers that do write notes, and they just go through them until they learn them. That's a great way to do it too. And what I recommend is you write your flow down, you do it on yourself, for a while. If you have the option to do private training, do it on your private training clients until you get comfortable to throw it into a group class. Luckily, I've created an environment with new flows with my students. I'm gonna like, you're gonna learn something new today. And it may be a little chunky and we'll clean it up. It's chunky because I'm learning it with you and you're also learning it. So whatever your style is, just try it out, trial and error, incorporating different movements in the floor to reformer flows. And thank you so much for joining me today.